Some people in this world are on the front lines of the struggle between good and evil, and some, like us, bear witness. I'm Therese Apel.
And I'm Nicole Crowell. You may have heard us as we worked on stories and series about law enforcement and crime. And it's safe to say we've seen some of the best and worst of human nature.
We decided there's no greater honor than bringing you the stories of the men and women who seek out the monsters, who speak for the victims, and who put the pieces together on some of the biggest Mississippi crime stories of our time. Welcome to Investigation Homicide. Hey guys, welcome to Investigation Homicide. I'm Therese Apel. We are here now. I guess this is week number 6.
Yes,
6?
it is 6.
Yes. And we have a special treat for you today. In this in this podcast, it's the new kind of blog, I guess. But anyway, in this podcast, we like to focus on the investigators that work the cases, basically to give you more of an idea of what goes on behind the scenes and of the people that have the actual information. But this is a special case where the investigator was not so traditional. But first, let's talk to my co-host,
Hello,
Nicole Crowell.
everybody. Hi. Hope everybody's having a great day.
How's it going for you today?
So far, so good. We've all had a very busy day today, and I feel like we can finally take a second and just hang out and breathe and have some chat together and leave the outside world out for just a minute.
Yeah, let this be the unwinding
I'm
time.
excited.
For those of you that follow the news side of what we do, obviously, today, the mayor of Jackson, Chukwueze Antar Lumumba, and the district attorney of Hinds County, Jody Owens, were both indicted along with a city councilman. So that has been going on in the real world today. And so that's why this is kind of fun for us to talk about something unrelated, but just as important. Our guest today is Ashley Martin. She is the mother of Alex Easterling, who went missing back in 2022. Now, I did this story at the time and got to know Ashley at the time, too. What's interesting, and just to kind of lay some groundwork for you, and I mean, the things we say here just are what they are. One thing we don't really allow ourselves much as journalists is to have an opinion. This all happened in Holmes County, which in my experience as a journalist, is not somewhere where there are a lot of solved homicides. Now, at this point, Ashley, we don't know for sure about Alex. He's missing.
Which is, to me, that's one of the hardest parts of any of it. Is, anytime you lose someone that you love, that's hard for anybody, and then you throw on top of it's a child, but to be in that position where you just don't know and to never have the opportunity for closure, it's a just this ongoing torment where you know, you know,
Your spirit knows.
um, but to not have that finality and the ability to fully grieve and to
Mhm.
just have closure um, is one of those things that I I don't wish it on anybody.
Well, and so start off. Tell us about Alex.
Uh, great kid, great kid. He growing up just super smart, avid reader, Boy Scout. Just your typical boy. Spent his summers at scout camp or just doing different things that were adventurous boy stuff. And once he got to be a teenager, things you got to kind of keep him in check. And being a single mom, that's tough to do sometimes. But he just all around good kid. And the was a new daddy. Um, had a little girl in 2017, and growing up the way that he did, I didn't get married until 2008, so he went that entire time with a mom that was basically mom and dad. And so having that, and that was one of the things that he expressed to me, is that he craved that family. He wanted it something of his own, and he just wanted to do it the right way. He wanted a child that would grow up with mom, the dad, and just have that whole, all American experience. So, and it started out that way, but, I don't ever hide the fact that Alex was one of the many, many people that got into the cycle of substance abuse. um, and everybody has their opinion on it. It starts, this is mine, it starts as a choice. But for certain people, that choice, to do that, to take that drug, that chemical, that drink, that spin on the wheel at the casino, whatever your vice may be, starts as an escape and then becomes a prison. You're trapped in it. And for Alex, that he got caught up in that life, and he's got this picture over here of what he wanted, but then we've got this picture over here of reality. Those two, especially, on closer to 2022, just never got the opportunity to mesh together.
Sure.
So,
Now, take us to the day that the last time you saw Alex. Give us that story.
it was April 20th, 2022. He had just spent the last 2 months, 60 days in the Hinds County Jail. And it all revolved around substance abuse, something that happened back in 2020. Stayed in Hinds County, and I had gotten so accustomed to it. Anybody who has somebody that they love with substance abuse, the hardest part that you have to finally get to is I can love you from a distance. No more enabling. I'm not bailing you out of jail. You've got to just sit there, and whatever consequence you face, that's what you're going to get. And so he was there for 60 days, ended up getting gosh, I can't even think of the word for it. It's not like non-adjudicated, but he was able to do, the program where if you do right for this amount of time, all the charges will go away. And so I picked him up that day. We went down to the Hinds County courthouse and got all his paperwork signed, and he found out the day he was supposed to come back, and went by Walmart in Madison, picked him up a phone, because the day that he got arrested, he didn't have anything with him. His cell phone got left in the car, his backpack got left in the car, all that. So the cell phone, even though it's against my better, I didn't want to spend any money on him, but that's the only way that I knew that I would still be able to stay in touch. Went to Walmart, got him a cell phone, went by my house, had some pizza, just hung out, just caught up. And then when it got time to, to go home, and of course the entire time he's at my house, I'm like, do you really feel like Pickens is where you need to be? Do you really, you've been in jail for 2 months, you're clean. Mama, I'm good. I got over the hard part, because we would talk while he was in there, and going through withdrawals is, I can't fathom it. Going through withdrawals in the county jail at Hinds County at the penal farm. It was his own torture to go through, but I never, want to try to say it exactly how I said it. I'm never going to let something have that much control over me again. I'm done with it. Which, whether it was or whether it wasn't, and I was like, let's just you can stay here. You don't have to go back to Pickens, whatnot. But he had a place up there. I got it. He's 30 years old. He wanted to go to his own house. So we hit the road 55 North, and the 144 exit to Lexington. When you get off that exit, there's the first gas station that you get to when you go left towards town is the Marathon, which is normally where everybody goes. He's like, can we run by the store and just get a pack of cigarettes before we go? I was like, yeah. Did we turn? I assumed we were going to go to the Marathon, but he's like, no, go on down to the Shell. It's cheaper there. Okay. So he goes in the Shell station, gets a pack of cigarettes, and comes back out. When he gets in the car, he's like, hey, so listen, I talked to a buddy of mine, and you can just run me by his house. You don't have to take me all the way home. And I was like, well, we're here. I might as well go. And he's like, no, really, it's like right here across the interstate, it's no problem. And I'll say this the nicest way I can. Holmes County, Mississippi, law enforcement, it's just not safe. I'll just say that. It's just not safe. And that's common knowledge. If you watch the news, had kids go on a trail ride recently after a homecoming football game. 3 of them didn't make it out alive.
Right.
8 of them are hospitalized, injured, still don't know, how the rest of their lives are going to be. That's just one instance. the size of Holmes County, and I think that made the 15th homicide, 15th or 16th. That's unacceptable. Anyway, all that aside, Holmes County's not safe. Pickens, Mississippi was not where I needed to be after dark. So I wasn't, he was like, you don't have to go, just take me to my friend's house. And so jump, back in the car, go right back across the overpass for 55, take a left. It was a road I never even knew was there. My family's lived in Holmes County for forever, Stockyard Road, and so we turned there and, just a little way in, there's a house. We turned into it. I was like, where are we? And he told me where we were. And just a regular, house, trailer, cars outside that were various states of disrepair, which is not uncommon in Mississippi. You drive by certain places in rural or not, you may have, a dozen cars in your, it's not
Right.
that abnormal. And so got out. I was like, all right, well, I love you, be smart, make good choices. And hugged him and said, he was like, just text me when you get home, call me when you get home, whatever. And I was like, all right, I love you. Let me know when you make it home too. And so I'm 40 minutes down the road. I jumped back in, and when I got to the house, sent him a text, hey, I made it home. I love you. Didn't hear anything back. And, my husband got home that night. And he's like, so, how did it go? I was like, I ended up having to drive him up, but I didn't have to go to Pickens. I took him by a friend's house, and he was like, well, how was he? It's like, it was just something weird. I was like, I took him, to his friend's house or whatever. I was like, but I just felt like there was just something on him, something just weighing on him, and you have that with the moms. And I think my husband says the words I use, I felt like he had unfinished business, something he had to instantly, when he got home, something he had to take care of.
Sure.
And I just felt it.
Well, and let me stop you there for a second. So I remember when you and I talked about this the first time, you talked a little bit about how it was kind of like you had this feeling in the pit of your stomach, like maybe you didn't want to leave him here. Like maybe there was a little bit of something going on in your mother's intuition. But that it sounded like you were maybe trying to overcome some of those, like you didn't want to be like, where are we? Is this Sketchville? What's up with these cars in the yard? Who are these people?
And again, he's 30.
Right.
You can only do so much. And it had taken me a very long time to get to the part of loving someone in the throes of addiction to love from a distance. This is where I am. If this is the life that you choose, I'll be here. I'll be here when you're ready. But if this is what you're going to choose, you're going to have to do it over there because it can't impact everyone else in your life anymore. And that's hard. It is hard. But that part, even with this, and as much as I miss seeing him every day, I still wouldn't change that part.
Gotcha.
I still wouldn't change that part of things.
Sure.
Because that's the only way that you can truly help somebody overcome that.
Right.
And if you love them enough, you have to.
Sure.
But I just felt it.
Well, and so to kind of give you all a little bit of background, I went out to this place, and we can't talk a lot of specifics about the people involved. We can talk about them in general. We can't give you names or whatever like that because obviously this is an open investigation, and there are things that we need to do, like use the word allegedly, to make sure that we're all within our bounds and that kind of thing. Because nobody's been convicted. Obviously, we still don't know where Alex is, but I went out to this place that we're talking about here. And at the time, I was actually in a text conversation with a friend of mine who was law enforcement, and he knew what I had been working on that day. And I told him that I had left talking to Ashley, and he said, tell me you're not going out there. And I was like, well, I'm just going to drive by. He's like, you text me as soon as you get back to safety.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is the thing, like your mother's intuition was on point.
Right.
You didn't know it, but you felt something that, there was danger there. Now tell me when you realized we had a problem.
When he didn't text back that night, I was like, I kind of felt like, but I was trying to kind of be realistic about it. he had just spent 60 days in jail, you know, hoping it wasn't instantly going back to using. Didn't know, but I had, I just kind of left it that. The next day, went to work, like normal, texted him a couple of times, called him a couple of times, couldn't get him. My mom sent me a note. She said, "How is he?" And I was like, "I got him a new phone. Here's his new phone number." She tried to get him, all that, and just nothing all day long, which didn't, I started kind of feeling it, but I stayed so busy at work that I kept just kind of going, maybe it's not. When I get back in my car, I'd try him again, then get back to working and doing. But that evening, my husband was working the second shift at that time. So when he got home, I don't know, 10:45, 11 or whatever, I'm still up, and he comes in, and I had just been kind of stewing on it. And I just looked at him and I was like, what's a good time frame to call and have a wellness check done? To just
Yeah.
get the sheriff's office to go and get a wellness check done. He was like, "Still haven't talked to Alex?" Like, I hadn't. He said, "Now, right now." Because right now. And so I sent a note to my dad, and I was like, "Hey, I still haven't heard from Alex. Maybe you can reach out and call Willie, and Sheriff March, because everybody knows Sheriff March. He's been there for 40 years. See if you can, call him and just get him to ride out there." He was like, "Where'd you send him?" All that. And I sent him all the info early the next morning. And I can say this because it's public record. Don't have to say a name of the friend, but I get a text from my dad, and it said, "You dropped him off at the drug dealer's house." And and you can't really describe that feeling. And my stomach just dropped. I was like, I always thought that my biggest fear would be getting that phone call. Is this Ashley Easterling? Are you the mother of? We regret to inform you, we found your child. That I would get that overdose phone call. Not knowing is so much worse. It's so much worse. But to have gotten that text from my dad, who took him to the drug dealer's house, and of course, I instantly pick up the phone. And I'm like, "How was I supposed to know that? How they don't post signs outside? How was
Get
I
your
supposed
drugs here?"
Right?
Yeah.
How was I supposed to know that? Well, everybody knew. Everybody knew. The sheriff's department knew. The county process. Everybody knew.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm still just insanely worried. But then I'm panicked. I'm like, well, this is where it was. Let's just go.
Now, at this point, are you thinking, "Oh wow, what if he overdosed?" Is that your thought train at that point?
My first go-to, absolutely. I was like, "Oh my gosh, he was in jail 60 days. He went, I knew he was using right before then, because I had not, even when he went and got arrested, I had not seen him. We talked fairly regularly, at least a couple, several times a week, but I had not laid my eyes on him since before Thanksgiving. We didn't spend Thanksgiving together. We didn't spend Christmas together. It had gotten to that point. So I knew that he was using very heavily. Well, there's fentanyl in everything, but that was my first gut instinct. He overdosed. And he's somewhere. He went and he bought it, and he's somewhere. We have to go find him.
So what do you do after you get that call, after you've established with your dad that this is where you had taken him and now you're on red alert?
Right. The first thing that happened is my dad went and saw Sheriff March, and this was on that Friday following. Went and saw Sheriff March, and he acted like he didn't know who he was. He's like, "Now where? Now who? Oh, well, okay. Well, let me see if I can find out who that is and where that is." Just completely ignorant to who that would be. And went and he was like, "Well, let me go check it out. Let's don't do that missing persons report just right now. Let me go over there and see what I can find out." And so Sheriff March went over and spoke with him, the friend that lives there, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Alex came by here. He was here yesterday, but I went inside, and there are 3 different versions, and I can't, right now, I can't remember which one he told Sheriff March, but, oh, well, I went inside. He needed some phone numbers. He had a new phone, so I went inside to get my phone to get some phone numbers. I came back, and he was gone, so I don't know. So my dad calls me. He's like, Sheriff March said that he went over there and talked to him, and that he said Alex just wasn't there. I was like, no, not fine. Nope. I know. I want you to go, Daddy. I want you to go and talk to him. My dad did. He private investigator in Mississippi. You don't have to be licensed to do it. You just whole nother ball game on that. But he served papers for the state of Mississippi for child support cases for years, and so he knows how to go and talk to
He's
people.
familiar with going
Yes,
into unusual
and
environments. Yeah.
getting answers and questioning people, the right way. So Daddy went over there and, hey, niceties or whatnot. And he was actually cordial, and was like, yeah, he came by here and was sending him text messages of, you need to call this person and see if they might know. And, but he told my dad, yeah, he was by here, but we were standing out here and I didn't have a shirt on. So I ran inside to put on a shirt, and I came back and he was gone. Another red flag.
There you go.
I was like, well, that's not what he told Sheriff March.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is not jiving. And so then I start getting, I'm stomping my feet and doing my thing, and pretty much insisting, I want on that property. I want on that property. That's where he was. That's where I took him. This guy he's come up with 2 stories already. So then they send another deputy out there. Well, we're going to go do a search of the property. I'll send somebody to go do a search. Don't worry. You don't need to come up here. We'll take care of it. And sent another deputy out.
Well, and let me interrupt again. So you live in Madison.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was this a situation where you were not, like, you didn't have the control that you needed or that you felt like you wanted because you're his mom,
Mm-hmm.
but also you're a county away.
Right.
And while you know these people, you don't have any direct pull over them because you don't live there.
Right. And that, it's feeling like your hands are tied is a terrible feeling also. When you have an expectation. And until you've been in a situation, we all watch CSI, or most of us, different things where you see how you expect things are supposed to go. Oh, he's missing, and this is, you got a warrant,
Right.
but that is not the real world. That is absolutely not.
We talk about that a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is not how it goes. And so they sent another deputy over, and he was going to check room for room all the way through. Well, when that deputy spoke to the person, oh yeah, it's like I told them, he was here and we were out here talking on the porch, but I went inside to get a cigarette, and when I came out, he was gone. Third version of, well, which one was it? Well, to me, that, that check probable cause number 1, different stories. You're telling, 3 different versions of something. There's, your first check. Still didn't, and of course that got me even worse. Well, that Sunday, because that was the Saturday before. Well, that Sunday, I was like, look, I've done all the sitting I can do, and I don't know how many people it ended up being. It was a lot of folks. We all ended up meeting up at the marathon, and it was folks on horseback, folks on
Wow.
ATVs, people on foot. It probably ended up being about 30 or 40 of us. And they wouldn't let me go. I was, I stayed at the vehicle, kind of manning things, because I was like, you don't need to be the one that goes out there, Ashley, which was extremely hard on me, but I didn't. And we're searching. We never went on the property again, but we're all around it because we're thinking, he said he left. Let's just look all around. Well, and I'm trying to find any, phone tracking, different things like that, anything, calling everybody that I know that I can think of that he would be friends with, and just nothing. They did find a lot of paraphernalia. a lot of just things that spoke to what I had already been told about the location. But never a trace of Alex. And then a few days later, we all well, and it was all that just kind of looking back on it now, it all just kind of blurs. Because there was just so much going on in that time. But there was a day that we had drones run. The MDWFP came, and as it turns out, it was one of the state troopers actually that was running one of the drones in the middle of the interstate. It was a weird location from where phone pings were and all that, who ended up being one of the MBI agents that helped us tremendously. And I didn't put it all together until I went back and read notes. I was like, that was you. That was you. And he's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was him.
Yeah.
So it all, it all kind of came together in through that whole, but we've done 3 large scale organized searches. And one of them that was in the first part of May, we had, I think it was 10 or 12 different dog teams, the handlers, the lead and the flankers, and that was a hard day because when we had the initial, I'm going to back it up because I said something wrong. We did get on the property once, one time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because
we did get on the
I know
property
that you
once,
guys,
and I kind of,
yeah, you guys got on the
glad
property,
about that day.
and so it was almost like up until this point, you're looking,
Yeah,
you know,
everywhere.
you think that something's happened. Then you have a chance to get on the property. And this is where, at least for me, I'm listening to the story the first time we talked, and it's like, at this point, we're at what happened to Alex.
Right.
You told me this story, and I was like, we got a homicide. Tell me about this.
We ended up back in, and we didn't get the warrant to search from Holmes County. It ended up, we had another friend in law enforcement that he made it happen, and had some folks, search teams from a local county, a close by county that they do fabulous work, that they came with trailing dogs and cadaver dogs. And we were able to go all through the property when we first got there, because it was all set up beforehand, and he knew we were coming and everything. But when we first got there, he was like, no, you're not coming through the gate. It was this back and forth, and he and I exchanged a few words. I'll say that politely. When I realized who he was, because I'd never laid eyes on him,
Mm-hmm.
I'd just been given descriptions of who he was, and I see this guy come out, and he went over and he shook the deputy's hand, and then he shook somebody else's hand, and then he shook my dad's hand, and then he turns to shake my hand. And no, I'm not shaking your hand. Just said, I'm here for a reason, and not to be your friend. Where's my son? He was here. I left him here. Where is he? And so that kind of got diffused quickly. And shortly after that, he made some phone calls to his mother, and then also to Sheriff March. And then very shortly after that, they let him go in the gate. And search in and around. The first thing that happened with the trailing dogs is they hit Alex's scent right at the front gate and trailed it all the way to the front door, walked around the front door a little bit, and then tried to go kind of off the way that the house sits. You'd have to just kind of Google it yourself on Google Maps. Anyway, that they tried to go to the long side, to the far end of the trailer. Which is not where you would go, and though if you've never seen trailing dogs work, when bloodhounds hit a scent, they will take you off your feet to get to where they want to go. And these are experienced dogs with experienced handlers, and those dogs wanted to go. Then the cadaver dogs came out and they search in a whole different way. And I know that each dog does something a little bit. I've learned so much about that now, but watching them do, but they made an initial alert.
Now, which dogs? The trailing dogs or the cadaver dogs?
Get out! No, the trailing dogs definitely found his scent and went. And now we know that it was kind of backtracking from the front door to the gate
Okay.
and a little bit out, but that handler, very experienced, very knowledgeable, trust him implicitly, said Alex did not leave here on foot. He did not leave this property. I can't tell you where he went from here to here. I know he was. I can tell you every spot my dog smelled, but from right here on, there's nothing. He did not leave here on foot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, there were. So then, the next handler gets out her cadaver dogs and they searched. They made an initial alert towards the very back side of the property. So the last, here's the gate and everything over on the front side, the far back side. But when they, and the trailing dogs, he's watching the homeowner while the cadaver dogs are doing and watching the body language and the different things that are going on. But when those dogs tried to again go around to the backside of the house, nope, he didn't go back there. He didn't go back there. You need
And
to.
this is the homeowner talking,
Yes.
telling you he didn't go back there.
And he wasn't speaking to me. He was speaking to the handlers because we were outside the gate still. He didn't go back there. Yeah, nope. He was like, well, what do you mean he didn't go back there? You said you went inside. You don't know where he went. So how do you know if he went back there or not? He didn't go back there. Y'all got to go. This is done.
And again, that's the homeowner saying he didn't go back there.
Right.
You guys need to take your dogs and leave.
Right. And that was it. That was the last time we were on that property.
Well, and let me add for the listeners, cadaver dogs don't alert on things like dead deer.
No.
They don't alert on animals. It is strictly the human decaying
Decomposition.
human scent that
Yes.
cadaver dogs attach to. So the fact that they alerted like that is a really good indicator that there was
Something.
human decomposition of some kind on that property.
And that was one of the things that you learned too. That initial alert means there's a change in behavior. They go from sniffing to, ooh, I caught something. I just caught a whiff of something that because for them, that's their prize. That's their goal. They don't know what it is. They just know, from 2 weeks old or 6 weeks old, however, early on they start their training. That's my prize. I'm going to get something
Right.
special if I find that smell. So that change in behavior happened in that initial alert, but until they can get to that goal, they can't make that final alert. So that, we didn't have that, but there was a change in behavior.
Sure. And while let me take a break for a second. Daniel, would you mind putting up picture number 1? We haven't showed you a picture of Alex yet, and that's going to be him right there. On the left. Yeah. And then if you don't mind, put up picture number 5. So that's going to be Ashley and Alex. And I wanted to kind of show those two because the fact is, we're telling this story, but you're a mom. You are the mom. You're sitting there watching all this happen. And how surreal was it for you that, like, I'm standing on this property where my son was last seen and I've got these cadaver dogs?
Yeah. That the reality of it when it hits you, it's one of those, I don't know that there's really a description for it. Surreal is kind of it. To feel so helpless. And something that I carried and still carry. I took him there. And against my better judgment, feeling it from the second that I turned into that driveway, from when I was leaving and going, I don't like it. I just don't like this. Enough to drop a pin and say, now, what's his name? And text it to myself. Because I just, that hurt me like just the guilt that I carried for so long. But had several people, talk to me about, and convince me and remind me, Ashley, that's where he was going. That's where he was going.
He would have ended up there. Yeah.
And had it not been me that took him, I wouldn't have even known where to start.
Sure.
So,
well, and so now you've been kicked off the property.
Yep.
What do you do next?
It wasn't very long after we got coordinated with several of we got a big search put together, and that is where the large scale search stuff came in, and all the different dog teams, and it was logistically getting it put together. My sister was instrumental in it. Different law enforcement agencies were instrumental in it. I don't want to, go off naming names because I know I'll forget somebody, but it was a huge group effort of here are the folks that we had the big map plats done out and the property lines, and this is your grid and this is your grid, and all of those dog teams coordinating with their GPS collars so they would know everywhere that everybody went. I think we had, ballpark of like 100 and something people there, and we covered a massive amount of ground just about everywhere along in that Stockyard Road area, from where Stockyard Road starts on Highway 17 all the way up, and it curves around to a big property with a lake on it that the local college, I don't know if they own it or lease it now, but along that curve, you could only go so far because there was a bridge out and you couldn't go any further on the road. But they were, all the pastures, it's so rural up there, that we did the huge search, and I just knew that day we're going to find him. And I can't remember if by then the phone, I'd still not gotten the phone ping information, I don't think. But we searched and searched, and just at the end of that day, it was so hard to go home without the answers. But it wasn't for lack of trying. And there were people that I had never even met that spent time and sweat and blood and tears, cried right there along with us. And, there's one of the handlers specifically, that we, I can't ever thank all of them enough, but that just said, don't give up. Don't ever give up, because we're not ever going to give up. That you need that. You need that continuous encouragement, because it is very hard to keep it up at that pace every day, and knowing the inevitable, still holding on to hope. At this point now, I was still holding on to hope. Maybe he's just somewhere.
Maybe he's just hurt. Maybe
he's just hurt. Maybe he's just knows that we're doing this and is like, dang, at this point in time, she's gonna be mad, because he had gone and started using, whatever it might have been. I was still holding on to it. But it really, by the end of that day, I was just like, if he's not out there, it didn't make sense that we hadn't. If he had just overdosed, we would have found him.
Right.
We would have found him.
Now, I want to take us to a place that you kind of have touched on, but we haven't been there yet. Because during this whole search, you've gotten to look everywhere but on that property. You had a moment on the property.
Yes.
And everything pointed to maybe there's something here. And then all of a sudden you're searching the perimeter again.
Right.
At some point, you yourself, as a civilian, went and learned how to read cell phone data. Okay. Now, I need you to understand that, like, most of the cops that I work with don't know how to read cell phone data.
Yes, I know.
And when they do learn how, they have to go to, like, big, long classes and do all these things. Well, I have so many questions about that, but we only have limited time.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, and there's so many trackers on phones and things anyway, but I had all his passwords to everything. So I'm logging into his Facebook. I'm logging into Google. I'm logging into, Instagram, is Snapchat, all that. Because a lot of times you'll have your location services on, and I'm like, well, I want to see where. Well, I looked on his Google stuff, and there's a Google. It's called Google Timeline. And if you've not ever looked at your own,
It's crazy.
crazy. They track
Everything.
everywhere you go.
Yep.
And most of it is done for advertising. It's all about the money. You know, they want to know, but it's just like if you go shopping at Renaissance and you walk by a certain store, all of a sudden you're going to get a text from them. Well, that's that cell block. You know, that's something that you go to the classes to learn.
Sure.
Well, once I got to searching in there, I was like, oh, well, there's history. Oh, well, here's this, this Google takeout data. Well, when you download your takeout data and it's JSON files, which I didn't even know what that was. And it's lines and codes and lines and codes. And I've now since learned that AI, ChatGPT can translate all that for you very easily.
Oh, no.
All you had to do is copy and paste. And it even says from the information you have input, the very likely last known location is blah. Yeah, AI. Of course, that was a year and a half after I'd initially discovered it. But when you look at this Google takeout data, you get lat long. You get data points.
Wow.
And data points even to the point of it tells you the accuracy of it. So if your accuracy is a 6, then you're in a 18-meter radius of what that lat long is. And it's, down to it. Well, we were at my mom's sitting at her dinner table, and I was looking at the timeline, just still on the maps at this point in time. And I saw the history button, and I'm clicking, and all of a sudden I see where I was like, oh, look, there he is on this day. And there's a little slide bar on your Google timeline. And I was like, oh, and I'd never played with it, but when you slide that bar, it gives you more detail.
Okay.
And it showed me the exact minute, 9:26 p.m., that phone left that property, and the dot went straight across the interstate, 300 yards-ish, in the middle of the woods.
Not on the road.
And I, at that moment in time, I don't even remember, we were helping plan a funeral. And my mother was going to be speaking, and I'm, on my laptop, and all of a sudden I was like, I found him. I found him. It'll take me a minute. It'll take me a minute to get past this one. I found him. And I wanted to, it was like 10 o'clock at night, and I was like, let's go. I know where he is. Look. And of course they were like, we can't go. It's the middle of the night. It's the middle of the woods, all that. For most of us, that's when we just realized, is that I want to cry through this.
It's okay. You're allowed to. That's your baby.
That we realized that he most likely wasn't here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So the next morning at daylight, we're out the door. And, my husband is a hunter, and we've got all of our little GPS locators and things. And we went straight to that lat long. It's just nothing. And I was like, no, we got to look again. We spent hours out there. And so I'm like, maybe they just flung his phone out the thing. That's what in turn, thank you, prompted me to pull up that data. And from that data, I learned, yes, that's where that dot landed, but the accuracy was 2,600. And I'm thinking, 2,600. The higher it is, the better it is. No. The higher that number is, that is the number, the radius in meters. So we went from here's this little dot to it covered both sides of the interstate. But then you go and pull up the cell phone tower data and you see where the lines cross and all that. Alex never left Stockyard Road. He never left Stockyard Road.
And now there were some other facts that I remember you telling me about that data. And it surprised me that you could do these things with a phone. So tell me about what else you saw.
Watching him move all around. And initially, and I'll correct this one, from the initial time that we talked, I thought he went in the backyard. Well, we've since I've been able to see, there's video surveillance of Alex that night on that property. You see me pulling up in my vehicle, opening the door. We walk around to the back of my car. We hug. Very hard to see. Last time that I saw him and hugged him, hugged. You see him walk up, and then they say it was a time, like, emotion that the surveillance data was a joke, but I got to compare the data that I had with what I visibly saw with my own eyes on that, and it matched up within about 6 feet. So it was, but the map was a little bit skewed and
Yeah.
things, but he was on the front porch. He did go off to the side, over on that front side where the dogs tried to go, but it doesn't show on camera that he went any further.
Well, and so I do want to ask you, because one of the things that just blew my mind was when you said that you could actually see where the phone hit the ground in the data.
Right. And it was, and that's the part that really, because we have analyzed it. There is a YouTube group that spends a lot of time really deep diving all of this. And in that surveillance video, when you see Alex walk out the front door and across, and he goes all the way to the far side and walks along a fence line and goes to that front gate. And when he walks out, a motion light comes on. And according to the data, within a minute of going outside that fence, that's when the fall happens. And we have analyzed it back and forth. And, there are some people that see this flash, and there are some people that, oh, well, that was just a car coming down the road. There's no real way to figure it out, but we know that the data was correct, and it was right outside that fence. Something happened, but he wasn't stumbling when he came out. There wasn't anything apparently wrong with him when you see him walking across that front yard. But for that phone to drop right then and not really have anything else go on for an hour,
and then the next time it moves,
it jumps. And I recreated that last ping. I was able to go to Walmart, buy the exact same phone, take the exact same trip from my house up 55, stop, went to the Shell station, came back across, didn't pull in, I stopped at the driveway long enough for the phone to ping. And then I just drove my car up to the top of Stockyard Road and parked. There is a sale barn up at the top of Stockyard Road. And so I just pulled in to the gravel parking lot, and just sat there, and my mom was with me, my sister, my little, Alex's daughter, was with me. And we all just sat there for a minute, and then, went on. Came home, pulled up the data. That dot that it showed, I knew where I was sitting when where it should have shown. It showed I was exactly the distance from across the street, exactly where that last ping was for Alex. I know he never left Stockyard Road.
Right. Now, at this point, we're looking at about 10 more minutes. Let's talk for a minute about what you've been told is possible from here on out, because I know that there are other agencies that have kind of looked into various pieces of this, even if they can't really look into the case because it falls under Holmes County.
Right. And unless you get an express invitation from the agency in charge, you can't do anything. And right now, without delving too much into too much, I'll say I can't do anything. I can't do anything. My mother and my father can't do anything. We have been legally barred from anything. I can't, people who follow Alex's case are like, hey, you haven't posted anything in a while. I can't. Hey, when are we going to have another search? I can't. So we've, I don't, it's hard to answer what's next and what we do next. I have reached out, and would love suggestions. I've reached out to the Attorney General's office. I've reached out to, whether it be MBI, all of them, all of the organizations that you would think would help, and none of them can, and not that they don't want to, because I've had a lot of people from a lot of different agencies that are like, we're with you, and we're going to do everything that we can, but, and they have to stop at that but,
Yeah.
because I don't expect anybody to put their job or their life or their, livelihood in jeopardy for this. But it's just crazy to think of, one, why do you, I understand if you don't have the resources in your department to help me find my missing adult child. Okay. But don't stop me from doing it. And the block that we've gotten all the way to legal action is stunning, which if he had just overdosed, we would have found him.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I also want to add is that we have a lot of listeners to this podcast so far that are law enforcement. So, and I see there's law enforcement that's commenting here, somebody that I've seen work on a pretty important missing persons case similar to this one. If there's anybody out there that knows a way to help, this is something that I've watched Ashley and her family go through. And the fact is, I mean, based on my years of experience as a reporter, a crime journalist working with law enforcement, I mean, the natural answer seems to be that he is, at some point, if he has not been moved, he is probably still in that same area. So we have a bunch of comments. Nicole, you have your glasses on, and I don't.
All right. So
there was one up at the top that was longer.
Oh, there's a
Can we
sweet
scroll
one.
up there a little
My
bit?
hair looking all crazy. That one. Many prayers from Miss Rhonda. Many prayers for you and your family. I believe he's probably under one of those cars or under home, if off ground. I hope you'll get peace and find him. A mother's worst nightmare, but real to her.
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me, Ashley, is that, like, you're going through something every parent is terrified to think could happen.
Right. And it is, and that's what people are like, oh, you're so strong and you're doing, and I am, because I have to be, Alex's little girl is our little girl now. I have to be. And if there's ever a time, it's hard. I was so nervous. I never get nervous about talking. I mean, I love to talk. But I was nervous coming because it is a hard thing to talk about, and essentially relive it. But harder than anything else is when you've got a child. It's hard enough for me to wrap my mind around, what if I never know? And I've prayed hard on that about, Lord, if I'm not going to ever, if I'm never going to get the answers, please just give me the strength to survive it. How do you explain that to a 7-year-old? How do you explain that to somebody whose little mind and little heart can't? And and there'll be times that she'll ask me, is he in heaven? And other times that she'll crack me up talking about, well, maybe, so and so, maybe my daddy's out there. And I'm like, well, honey, so and so, you don't know. You don't know where he is, and she'll just, pipe up with that. But she needs that. And it's just, that part hurts me deeply for her. And the other really crappy part about this is I am one of so many people. And having to navigate, not just with a missing person, but having to navigate it alone.
Mm-hmm.
There is no protocol. There are some groups out there missing in Mississippi. We have the new repository that's up in North, out of Starkville. There are people out there to help, but there's just as many that prey on you. And the lack of protocol is stunning. Now we've got silver alerts. We've got, the children, for the seniors, for the, if you've got a mental, disability, something, all of those. But when it's a missing adult, there is no protocol. When it's a missing adult who's had interactions with law enforcement or a history of substance abuse, you're on your own. You are on your own. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And it'd be okay if we were on our own and that was it, because we're going to do it. We're
Right.
just get out of my way.
Mm-hmm.
Don't keep me from it. And that's kind of where we are right now. Is I don't know where to turn, because I've been blocked from doing anything else. And so, here we sit, and even to the point that we've had calls that have gone into the Crime Stoppers that had to be researched and dug by MBI because they weren't told to me from the sheriff's department. Yeah, that's a whole nother ball of wax.
Yeah.
Of possible locations. This is, I'm telling you, Miss Ashley, this is where you need to go. This is what happened. And we just can't go. And we just can't go.
Yeah.
Even if it turns out not to be true, let me check it off the list.
Absolutely.
And but yeah, that part has been, but just when you think things can't get any worse with this, they do. But the twists and turns we could do this 5 times over, and I still probably wouldn't be able to give you all the details of just what craziness that has gone on just within Alex's case, with the curves and the turns and the different characters that are involved. It would blow your mind. We could literally have our own Netflix special, but I don't want that until I have the resolution.
Right.
Well,
let's
and
find him.
I can say, from having worked crime in this area now for better part of 2 decades, Holmes County has a crime network all its own. There are people that are connected across the board. I have so many cases of different things. I mean, deer camp robberies, ATV sales that are fake, things like that. People shooting at game wardens, homicides. A case where a man was apparently beaten to death by all indications, but then it was never a handicapped man beaten to death. And as you look at the names involved in these cases, they all in different ways connect, whether it's known associates, whether it's, affiliations, things like that. So the thing is, I'm going to tell you, in my experience as a crime reporter, I see when these things, they go on, they do for a long time, but at some point, what is in the dark comes to the light.
Absolutely.
Nicole, do you have any questions?
Every single time. We have a little bit of a cutoff today, but I would love to keep talking. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
I thought about you. I mean, I remember when Therese told me about Alex's case when we first started working together. And when she said you were coming in today, I was like, what? And Therese goes, what's wrong? I said, no, that's amazing. Like, I'm so excited. And I can't, all day long, I can't imagine. I don't have kids, but the feel, even, and this is going to sound, I don't want this to sound, but when my dog gets lost, or I don't know where my cat is, or like something's wrong, that gut feeling in your stomach that I will give everything up in my entire life just to find this thing that I love so much, this person, this being that I love so much. And for it to be your son, I truly cannot imagine. And to have to repeatedly talk about it and not have answers, I really am so sorry.
Well, and it's bringing it to light, one, in hopes that there's somebody that may have a suggestion, may have an idea, anything like that.
Yeah.
But two, we touched a little bit about this, recently. I want something good to come from this tragedy.
Yeah.
I want something good to come from the loss that I've endured, that my granddaughter has endured, that my family has endured in total, that Alex's friends, people who love him, who have known him, something good is going to come from this. I know it. And I that if nothing else, that I want that, and to let other people going through this know that they're not alone, and that there are other people who've been through it that understand it, that can help you find somebody to do your missing posters. The difference in, and I'm in marketing, the difference in how your missing poster makes all the difference in the world. Who to reach out to, what next steps to take, because it's overwhelming, and you're suffocating and drowning in this grief, but you've still, how to know what next steps to take. And so, having something good come from this terrible, terrible tragedy is, my ultimate hope, after getting the resolution and the closure that my family desperately needs. And being able to help guide other people through tragedies like this, and, where to turn and what next steps to take, what next steps not to take, to try and help them reach some resolution and some closure.
Absolutely. I want to say this one got me in tears. Oh my baby's 42 and I can't imagine not knowing where she is. My heart goes out to you. No love like a mother's love. Therese, I'm going to let you close it out in just a minute, but I'm going to switch the vibe if that's okay.
Yeah.
We're going to close it out in just a minute, but I want everybody to know, Ashley, thank you so much for being here today. I want everybody to know that yesterday was Therese's birthday.
Happy birthday! Thank you.
And we're going to chop real quick, but I do have a little bit of surprise for you. It's right there on the side of your couch. I snuck it in.
What?
I saw you with your
Everybody
crown
knows
on.
that I love making Therese cry. So
Okay.
excuse
hold on.
the rapping noise that's going to come from the microphone.
What did you do?
But she's my favorite person, and I couldn't be here without her. And I know that just like we're talking about all the people that we love, this is
all my fur babies.
everything that Therese left. I couldn't find
Oh
a
my
picture of your
gosh.
cat. I'm so sorry. She's not on the internet, but
Yeah, I have to turn this
but
around.
this is Therese's crew.
This is my family.
We have at the top, we have Kobe, and then in memory of Toby on the
Toby
top right.
is this one.
Yep, Pax top
he's
left.
passed.
That's the three-legged pitty. Barney comes from our barn, Strong River Equine.
Oh wait,
nope,
he's over
down
here.
there.
Yep.
Chester. There
That's
you
this
go.
one.
That's Chester. And at the bottom, Bailey. And in the middle, we have Bear. And happy birthday. I love you
Thank
so
you.
much.
I love this. Thank
I
you
wanted
so
to
much.
squeeze it in. I didn't want to interrupt anything, but I wanted to squeeze it in.
It's amazing.
Ashley, I do want to ask you one more question. You have put in so much work into this case throughout the years. Is there anybody you want to thank for kind of keeping you grounded, keeping you keeping you motivated to do this? Who would you like to kind of?
There are so many people, but my husband is my rock. He is my voice of reason that kind of pulls me back down from the ledge, so to speak. When I've got some, I'm just gonna go. He's like, my mother and father have both been tremendously strong in between helping with helping with our little girl.
Yeah.
To we take turns. And then my sister, she's really been my rock. To the point that she has delved into a new path, to where when I say we're going to do it on our own, we're going to do it on our own.
Let's go, girls.
And I can't talk too much about that either.
That's fine.
But she knows. And there are a lot of people in Mississippi that know what I mean by that too. And she's doing it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Shout out to your sister.
So you guys can see why, even though, like I said, we like to focus on investigators and that kind of thing, but I feel like in this case, Ashley is the investigator. What in a situation where law enforcement in most cases has their hands tied, or doesn't seem to be helping, Ashley has done what she had to do and gone above and beyond. And I don't think it's anything that any other mother wouldn't do. I think they just don't always, you figured out what you had to do. It wasn't, so that's why I felt like it was important for us to talk to you about this case. And again, we want to just ask you guys, law enforcement that listen to this, if there's something you can do to help. I think many of you are familiar with the dynamics in this case that, we kind of have to just, she's kind of just got to take it. And I know that some of y'all know different ways that perhaps you could help. So thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
And Nicole, thank you.
You're welcome. I
All
love
those
you so much.
Yeah. So we're just grateful that you guys joined us. If you're joining us later, you can leave comments also. If you're on a podcast platform, we appreciate you downloading us and just tune in next week, same time, same place. Many thanks to Daniel, our producer with Audio Alchemy. If you need a podcast, he is your man.
Yes.
So
100%.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.